I want somebody who's a good communicator and a good technologist and a good presenter and is good with numbers and can create slides and tap dance and chew gum and pet their head at the same time. So Michael was saying that he has a global team, and trying to find this person is really like trying to find it. And the expression he used was trying to like kill a unicorn with a silver bullet. And I said, can we come up with a slightly less violent analogy? So the analogy we came up with is trying to create an effective global ecosystem is like trying to find a white unicorn in a blizzard. You can do it, but you need to know where to look and how to do it. So Michael, are you on deck? Come on up.
Cover slide. We're all set? Oh, perfect. Hey, how's everyone doing today? So, based on that title, finding a unicorn in a blizzard, I was like, oh my God, how am I going to find that picture? But it's amazing what you can find on Google Images. So, yeah, I'm going to talk about putting together a global content marketing program at scale. Is it really this magical unicorn that everyone talks about, but no one can do? Not really. If you have the right team in place, you can make it happen. So just a background, again, my name is Michael Goldberg. I work at Dun & Bradstreet, the largest commercial database on the planet that helps businesses understand risk and opportunity. And I have a global team of content marketers, and we're putting together our content strategy. I don't like to think of myself as a marketer. I am a journalist by background. I think many of you are also, any journalists here? Great. And how many marketers here? All right. Well, not many, so I really don't like marketers, but, and don't get me started on salespeople. But, there's been great sessions so far, technical things, but I spend the majority of my day in Microsoft Word, so I don't know any of that world. I am a writer by heart, so I'm developing our editorial calendar, our go-to-market strategy, which includes writing our ebooks, white papers, blogs, websites. And doing that for Dun & Bradstreet, I have to do that on a global basis for 9 markets across 6 languages. And that's no easy task. It's something that when I first started, we kind of took for granted. We just put content together and we go to market and just hope other teams would use it or translate it, and there was no rhyme or reason for what we were doing. So we knew that we needed to change that because content is so important. Content is universal, right? We're here at this conference. Everyone loves content marketing, although it's always been a foundation for marketing. It's just recently that they put this label on it, said content marketing. But I've been in the industry for almost 20 years, and I've always been doing some form of content because good storytelling just drives good marketing. But what's not universal is language. And I'll leave it to everyone's favorite fake physicist from the Big Bang Theory with this quote that really speaks to that. I won't eat pumpernickel ever again, and after this quote. But it's a good analogy to say that what means something in one culture doesn't really mean something in the other culture. So that's really important to think about when you're putting together your content. You're not just writing for you and your market. You have to think about how that content will resonate with other markets. And that's because language is unique. And it's really important to have that frame of mind when you're building your global content strategy. These are just some stats that you think are a no-brainer. People in other countries want content in their own language. But so often, we used to go out and just say, well, English is the most popular language. People use it and just hope that people will enjoy it. But that stat at the end, more than half of your audience wants stuff in their language, and they care about that more than price. So it's really important to think about. So when you're building your strategy, think about the words you use and how that translates. But it's not just words. So does anyone see anything wrong with this picture here, besides it being a really cheesy stock photo? So I'll tell you just a quick background story. I was building an ebook about targeting affluent marketers that we were going to use in the US and the UK. So I grabbed this picture and I thought, okay, this looks like a nice affluent, diverse bunch of people. Slap it together. I thought it went really well, and we went to market with it. About 2 hours after I sent it to the UK team, I have a frantic call from my UK counterpart. She's saying, Michael, we can't use this, my UK accent stinks, I won't even try doing that. We can't use this piece of content. And my heart sunk. I was like, oh no, did we mess up with the research? Did I have typos? What's wrong with it? She's like, no, the content's fine. The image can't be used. I was like, why? We own the rights. It's a stock photo, don't worry. She's like, no, having a bunch of smiling people in the UK is considered not, it's offensive to them. And I learned that, and I didn't ask questions. I just said, okay. So I had to go back and completely redo the cover, and that cost time and resources. Yeah, so no smiling faces. So I learned very fast that it's not just about words and images. It's words and images together are really important. So I hope everyone gets that, okay? Is there anyone from Brazil here? Because I just completely insulted you by using that image. As it turns out, doing this in Brazil is very obscene. So again, I learned a lot. Some things that you need to consider when you're putting your strategy together. The words, the images, the cultural references you use, dates, seasons, holidays, even colors, the use of maps and flags, and who thinks about that stuff? But I've built content where I throw in an American flag and oops, no one cares about that outside of America. And colloquial expressions. Another example of my failure. I do have examples of doing things right, believe me. But I'm a huge football fan, and I put together an infographic around the Super Bowl, and I said, oh, everyone watches the Super Bowl. That's global. That should work. Of course, the Super Bowl is copyright. Not allowed to use that. So I had to just use football. And yes, the people in UK and Ireland do not equate football to football. They think of soccer. So they were like, we're not using this. And I had to redo it for them. I kept it in the US, but again, more time and resources because I was not working on a global level. I was working in silos, just thinking very narrow-minded about the content. So what you should be doing when you're building your global content marketing roadmap? You've got to start at the global level. What's your mission statement? What are the content pillars you're putting together? That should never change, but you should get buy-in from the local team. Then you have the content architecture. What are the topics and the themes that you're going to be using throughout the organization? And what are the editorial guidelines that you need everyone to adhere to? I mean, that's pretty important. You have your standard brand voice, your tone, and you don't want other teams to go off. But at the same time, you have to open up your content to localization. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But there's different products, there's different news, there's different events. You have different goals, KPIs, and different distribution methods from country to country. So you have to keep that in mind. So how we do it in Dun & Bradstreet, I like to think that content is the heart of all marketing organizations, not just at Dun & Bradstreet, but I believe without content, your marketing sucks. But that's just me, because I happen to do content. But we take a lot of our inputs from our integrated marketing team. So together, they're coming up with the goals, the business roadmap, and building out personas. Does anyone here use personas to guide your content strategy? Great, great. That's really important because we want to understand who our target audience is, what their pain points are, what are their biggest challenges. And that doesn't change. That's going to be the way we do that no matter what country we're in, because that's our core audience. So that's on the global level. But then we've got products. We have products in the US that don't exist in the UK or don't exist in Ireland. So that's where the local team kind of can come in and fine tune what we're doing. And then again, I mentioned KPIs. Everyone wants to measure the success of your content, but there are different measurements that you adhere to based on what your ultimate goals are. Then content comes in, we develop our content pillars, and then we open that up for local ideation. So when we start our content plan, we start with one big core idea, and I like to build out our editorial strategy throughout the year. And we have one big core, big rock content topic for each quarter. But it's important that I'm building that out with all the local teams. There's representatives from all our countries weighing in on what we should be doing and what makes most sense. And from there, when we agree on that, we'll go out and develop the big asset with one global look and feel, again, the same tone, and then it'll just go off to translation, which would be just a complete translation one-to-one. No room for interpretation there. But underneath is when you start building your derivative content assets. You know, from that big piece, you can create infographics, blogs, slide shares, a lot of content, and that's where localization can come in. And then at the bottom, there's the always-on content, the BAU, business as usual content that every team is developing based on their local needs. So again, it starts at the brainstorm with everyone involved. The content's created, it goes to design, everyone reviews it, everyone gets a say in it, because you never want to hand off pictures of smiling people and have someone yell at you again. We don't want that. And then translation. Translation is really important, that you're working with really good translation services teams, and I'll talk about that in a second, and then you publish. So how do you manage all of this? It's not really easy. You know, we use a great platform called NewsCred, and there's multiple content marketing systems like this to manage every step of your workflows. Before we use this, we were doing everything ad hoc, and everything was sent by email, and India would have one thing done in a week, and then UK would have something done 6 months later. It was really a big mess. But having NewsCred really allowed us to have a workflow for every step, from the writing, the copy editing, the proofing, the SEO inputs, and you'll see here the translation. And this allows us to ping all of our translation service partners when something's ready for them to translate. Then when it's all done, it comes back into the system, we know it's done, and we can go off and publish. And we can tell them what language we want to publish in. Finally, using this system, it really allows us to find all the content we need. Again, we were keeping this on people's desktops in my email. I would get emails at 3 o'clock in the morning from the UK asking me, where do we have this, where do we have that? That was a lot of fun. But now we have this platform, and you can search by market, by language, to find the content you need that you want to use. So translation, I mentioned how important translation is. I like to say translation is like looking in a mirror. You want to make sure that when you're translating something, it should keep the entire voice and tone intact. But that's not always easy to do. Some of the things that can go wrong when you're translating, when I'm writing, if I go off on a tangent and make it really difficult for a translator to interpret, then I'm not doing my job very well. I love to write, crazy in my own time, but business-wise, I keep everything concise, because time is money, and it's not very cheap to do a lot of these translations. It's also important to keep word count in mind. We work within a lot of different templates, and we have to adhere to strict character counts for collateral and websites. And I have to understand that when I put something in English, when it gets translated, the French might be much longer. So we have to make sure that we're writing for that. We never use the same word more than once. If I'm describing something, keep it simple. That also helps keep the translation costs down. And finally, avoid slang. And I think the pumpernickel example kind of sets the tone there. So there's global and local. And you have to come in with this global lens of your marketing, but at the same time, you have to allow your teams to be local, which means writing for their market. That's because translation is not always enough. And I'll give you some examples. So localization is when you take a piece of content and then each market gets to tweak it and update it based on their specific needs. This is an example of a B2B did on the state of data. And we debated back and forth, do we want to do a global study? And then the UK market said, well, I care about what the UK audience thinks, and the French team wanted their audience covered, and we decided, okay, we're going to have one survey, we're going to field it to different markets, and the results can be published individually. So we went out with this one concept, this one study, but we came back with multiple different reports that focused on each market's audience's needs. And you'll see on the left, we have the American version, and on the right, the lovely A4 version, which is always fun to account for when you're printing. Then you have transcreation. Transcreation is just having your local markets do whatever they need to do based on market trends and research going on that I don't know anything about. There's an example here in French. I have no idea what that article is about. It mentions Donald Trump. I'm not reading it. I don't want to know about it. So they're just doing what they need to do. And then Brexit is an example. That was a huge, huge big topic last year, 2 years ago at this point. But the UK market, obviously, they're the subject matter experts on there, and they had to respond to that much faster. So they have the power to go and write that content based on their needs. So some key takeaways. I was pretty fast, so everyone can drink soon, hopefully. No dictators. I'm not putting together a content strategy and telling people this is what we're doing, love it or leave it. I want buy-in. I want weigh-in. I want to help make our messaging as impactful as possible. And hearing other markets and what works is really important. Again, it's looping the local plans into the planning process and getting buy-in from them. But at the same time, it's important not to let those local teams go off the rails. You know, they still have to adhere to your corporate brand voice and tone. So it's important not to just give them the keys and say, go crazy. And the biggest success story we had was managing all this through technology. Having a platform like NewsCred or whatever platform you might want to use is really a great thing to use to manage your total content workflows internally, externally, across the market. It's made everything simpler. We've saved a lot of money by having this instated. And lastly, evangelize your content everywhere. The content teams in the US, UK, and other markets, we all know that the content we're creating is great. The sales team, they have their heads, well, I won't talk about the sales team, but you have to evangelize your own content. You're marketers to your audience, but you're marketers to your own company. And you want to make sure that you're making sure that everyone's using the content. Lastly, that's what you can do to make sure that your content doesn't suffer a mega death. I had to work the shirt in. I had to. And I will just leave you with examples of translation gone horribly wrong. So hopefully none of you have accounted for this. So thank you.